Yeah, you read the title correctly. And this is not just me trying to get you to clickbait and then not watch it. I really don't think Elden Ring's a good game at all. It's a bad game. A really bad game. Let me explain. If you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. I like to talk about nostalgic games and games that come back to life in a modern setting. Now, why am I talking about Elden Ring if that's what my channel's about? Well, Elden Ring in particular is coming from me, a nostalgic gamer who's actually coming in and playing. Of course, I play modern games, but this one really bothered me, especially because it won so many Game of the Year awards. Elden Ring is considered by many one of the best games ever created, and one of the best games of 2022 without question. Except I questioned it a lot. I really don't get it, and I'm going to explain why and where that comes from. So let's first start off with, how did I first hear about Elden Ring? Well, I was actually staying overseas at a friend's house for some time, and he's a pretty avid gamer. And he was talking about, and he's much younger than me, and he was talking about how a new game is coming out and everybody's raving about it before it even came out. It was a lot of marketing hype towards it, and it was a game called Elden Ring. And Elden Ring, at the time, I never heard of it, and I didn't have the hype for it. But he was talking about it, and then I started looking it up, and there was definitely hype there. And he was ready to purchase it on day one. And he hyped it up enough to where I was like, you know what? I think I want to pick up Elden Ring too. It looks kind of interesting, and George R.R. Martin has a lot to do with the story. This has got to be a good game, and I'm jumping in on a fresh story, and I love good stories in video games. So I'm all in. I get Elden Ring, he gets Elden Ring. I had my laptop, so I would be able to play it there overseas while he had his huge desktop set up and ready to go. So I start up Elden Ring after installing it, and I didn't like it. Now, let me explain a little bit more why and where that comes from, and why my opinion is probably different than most others. Now, a little bit of background about Elden Ring. Elden Ring was developed by kind of like the same team that created Dark Souls, and it's kind of like in that intertwined. It's not in the same world, but it's kind of like the same like development methodology and how that gameplay is. It kind of tiered its way, from what I know, into Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring's story was partially crafted by George R.R. Martin. Now, he had a lot to do with like the basics of the world and the story, but it was really the director of the game that took it from a gameplay perspective and developed it for Elden Ring, the video game. So now, enough about the game. Let's talk about what my initial impressions were. So I booted up the game, and I created my character, and then I started the story, which seemed kind of empty. It had some synopsis to it, but then when I start playing, the world itself seemed very empty. And then there were these things on the floor that would kind of drop like either hints, or they were just nonsensical statements that were made that you could find everywhere, because this game is online and a lot of people can leave their comments about the game like scattered all around there. But I didn't know that. It was day one. It was like launch date when it came out, and it had all of those comments. But I'm like running around and I'm trying to like figure things out and get a hold on the many things going on in this world. Now, it kind of leads you in the way of where you need to go for most of the time, but as you're going, you're just trying to get a grasp on this beautiful looking world. Now, the graphics are pretty impressive, though I gotta be honest, graphics don't always do it for me. It's really interesting gameplay. So I'm learning the buttons, the mechanics, and just kind of going around. And then I encounter my first enemy after a few minutes and get killed instantly. Now, I know this game is particularly hard, and it's known to be hard, and the part of the challenge and part of the quote-unquote fun is to get past those difficulties and learn how to get better and then level up and all of that stuff. But it was just weird. These encounters that I had were just weird. It's almost like there's no reason on why someone would come and just start attacking me. It almost seemed like everyone I see is trying to kill me. That's so pointless, especially early on in the game, if I don't have some context around it. And the context around this game and why things are happening at first is very limited. But you're trying to, actually engrossed me in this world early on. And the Dark Souls type of games and those type of games I've never been involved in, or I've never been a real fan of because I haven't really played them that much. I actually have Dark Souls for PlayStation 3, but I never even touched it. I actually got it for free. And I felt like empty. Like, I like a story, like playing, for example, God of War Ragnarok, or the other God of War that came out for PlayStation 4. The story builds you in, it builds the drama, it builds the emotion as you go and start doing your action set pieces. And you're not always, fighting and doing all of that. There's enough set pieces to where you actually are more involved and more engaged in the story and the gameplay, because the gameplay is amazing too. Not to say that Elden Ring's gameplay isn't amazing. It's got its pros, but it's definitely got its cons. It's really, at least from early on, from my perspective, I don't get it. I really don't. And if you want to build in new players to actually enjoy this type of gameplay, it's got to be a little bit more approachable. And I just was bored, unbelievably bored with the vast, quiet, nonsensical world that I was dealing with. Now let's talk about the difficulty. Yes, I mentioned that I loved the story in, like, for example, God of War story and other action games like Spider-Man, Miles Morales that just came out to PC. The stories get you engaged, the gameplay is great, but it all has a nice flow to it. Even though, for example, Spider-Man, Miles Morales is an open world game and you can do so many different side quests, you're still led on to a path of, like, knowing what your motivations are and going from there. Whereas Elden Ring, yeah, you have motivations, but everything is so boring. It's just a boring game. It's laid out very boring. I'm not even going to say hard was what actually turned me away from this game. It was the fact that I found it very boring. Now, speaking of difficulty, being a nostalgic gamer and a gamer that has been playing games since the mid-80s, there was a game for Sega Master System called R-Type. And R-Type was a game which is a shoot 'em up, and it wasn't much story into it. Like, you pop the cartridge in the Sega Master System and you literally are a spaceship, start shooting everything, and pretty much that's it. And it gave you 3 lives and a 1-hit kill, so you had to do everything perfect. And let me tell you, so many bullets flew around, you were like lucky just to get past a few levels. But the game in itself and the gameplay and everything involved was fun. Like, I could see myself just playing it, get a little bit further, recognizing the patterns and then just going. But it wasn't impossible to enjoy the game. Did I ever beat it fairly without a cheat code? No, that game was really hard. But it was fun enough to where I would want to try. And because it got you in quickly and you knew kind of what you were doing from the get-go, to me it was more enjoyable. And then, like, the stuff that you would get, like the special guns and everything that you would have, was so cool that I actually found that game to be one of my favorite games, despite the fact that it was unbelievably hard. Elden Ring, I couldn't get invested enough in that boring world or boring intro to even care about it. Now, I spoke earlier about my friend who bought it and was super excited about it. He would spend night after night after night playing Elden Ring for hours because he had a day job. So at night he'd come in, lock himself in his computer room and play for hours. Absolutely loved the game. Could I see what he liked? No, it just didn't appeal to me. Now, everyone's got a different opinion, but if there's someone out there that can see that the fact that this game, at least for someone who's new to this type of gameplay style, is unbelievably bored, it's horrible. Now, adulting has partially to do with this. I'm somebody who actually loves my Steam Deck, and I love my PlayStation Vita because it allows me to play a game, play it for a few minutes, and then put it away. And yes, this game does work for Steam Deck, so maybe I'll try to give it more of a shot, but there's so much patience I have to have because being a busy guy, working on videos, then having a day job, which is completely different from YouTube, because I don't make money off of this channel. I do it for fun and for you guys. There's a limited amount of time that I have, and I do appreciate my sleep. I am not losing sleep over a game that I find absolutely boring when I've got a backlog of games that are actually fun and engaging when compared to Elden Ring. The fact that Elden Ring got Game of the Year in the Game Awards, I understand because of all the work that went behind it, but there was a lot of media hype behind it, and I fell for it. Because after all that media hype where all the channels talk about how wonderful this is, and when the Steam Deck came out, I was like, oh, it can play Elden Ring. How amazing. No, I don't care. Now, I've actually been putting up on this video gameplay of me like playing Elden Ring and being stuck in this one particular spot over and over again. That's not bad, but my problem with it was not the difficulty of like this spot. It's the fact that it makes no sense on why I'm getting attacked by this huge monster that comes out of nowhere, or the guys with arrows. It made no sense. And the fact that their accuracy with the arrows is unparalleled, like, holy cow, they'll never miss. If you're coming, they'll never miss. You have to constantly dodge, and it's what, like, there's hard and then there's ridiculous, and that is just ridiculously hard, and there's no point to it. It doesn't seem like there's any logical value on why they would have to make it that difficult. And it's almost like because they just want you to play it and actually extend the life of the game, because if you have to do it over and over and over again, and Elden Ring, from what I hear, is a pretty long game anyway, I couldn't get into it. And even if this had an easy mode, I'm just not into the world, and it didn't do any proper world building that got me into it. And I've given this game plenty of chances. It's not just like I played it once and I was done with it. I would come back to it because you keep hearing all these channels and all these YouTubers like, this is the greatest game ever created, this is so awesome. And I'm like, I just don't see it. Graphically, fine. I mean, it looks great. It runs great on my computer as well, but I don't get it. Now, again, I have a feeling that a lot of the reason why I can't get into it, and maybe most people can, is because I don't have the time that I used to have when I was much younger. But I'm also someone who's an older gamer, and when I play modern games, I do like to have just kind of that world building. I do like to have a more pick up and play style. It can be complex, but if it gets too complex, it's not that I can't get into it or I can't figure it out. It's just that because my time is so limited, because I have so many things that's going on, I don't feel like this game earns my attention, and it doesn't. So all in all, the marketing and friends hype, yeah, I fell for it. But at the end of the day, this game is not for me, and it might not be for you either if you're anything like me. Let me know what you guys think, and I imagine that I'm gonna get slaughtered in the comments. But let me know what made you like the game. What made you, if you do like Elden Ring, what made you kind of like jump into it and really appreciate it for what it was? Or were you like me, where you're like, I'm bored and I just bought this game, I don't know what to do? And quite honestly, that's how I felt. It was just, I was too bored, and it still continues to bore me. Every time I boot it, I'm like out of it, and I'm playing, like, for example, Spider-Man Miles Morales. I'm playing a classic game like Turtles Cowabunga Collection or something like that. It just, I don't get Elden Ring. And I will say, because of that, to me, it's a bad game. Bad game. And I'm sure it'll probably get better, especially once you're engrossed. But you haven't caught my attention this early, and that is a major issue. Anyway, that's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Don't kill me too much in the comments, but you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys later.